Good morning. Welcome on this Wednesday morning, October 6th. Good morning, Joe Stromberg. Mike and Joe, welcome this morning. Okay, the numbers are already climbing much better than yesterday, so Facebook must still be fixing their issue, at least a little bit more, further down the path. Janisa, yes. Prompt notification, good. Facebook is functioning, thankful. Mom, good morning to you. Barbara Richardson, Jim and Kathy Fuente, Debbie King, good morning, everyone. Yeah, yesterday, I'm glad we got our, I'm glad we got our live stream in on Monday before the big Facebook blackout. Jonathan, good morning. Dana, good morning. Good to see you. Carmen, good morning, everyone. So yesterday was obviously a problem, but still, come rain, come sleet, come hail, come snow, we're still going to do the devotion, whether Facebook's have got a problem or not. Well, maybe not, but that's our hope anyway. Sonia, Jordan, good morning to you. Mike Johnson, Lori Agassi, good morning, everyone. We are in Psalm 66, but I'm really only going to be talking about one verse. Sally Crocker, welcome. Jan Akins, good morning. And it's found late in the psalm. The psalm itself is this glorious praise of God, who it's written by David or attributed to David, and it displays the glory of God in his answering David's prayer. He doesn't tell us what he was going through, what kind of trial he was experiencing. He talks about how God delivered Israel out of bondage from Egypt, in which he personally did not experience, but that's the example he uses as to how God delivers in miraculous ways. And he applies it to his own life and just giving God glory for answered prayer. But he says one thing in the psalm that I think is interesting, and it prompted more reflection this morning. Right at the end, he says, in verse 18, he's going on about God's answered prayer, and he is good, and I'm going to pay my vows. When I was in trouble, I made some promises. I'll make sure I'm going to make good on those promises, and all those things. Lots actually to talk about in Psalm 66 as it relates to prayer and so on. But he says one statement in verse 18 that I think is interesting, that I want to test a little bit. He says, "If I had cherished iniquity in my heart, the Lord would not have listened." So God's doing all these great things for him, delivered him, awesome. And he accounts, he attributes that, obviously to the glory of God foremost. But he said, if my heart wasn't right, God would not have listened to me. He would not have answered my prayer. And iniquity is a word that we use to describe, wickedness. My character is flawed. I'm immoral, or whatever. Iniquity. People live in the den of iniquity. It's bad stuff's going on. If my life were characterized by iniquity, God would not have answered. These are David's words. So it prompted me to kind of test that a little bit, and talk about kind of the general overarching statement. This idea of when our prayers go unanswered, when God is silent, and we wonder why. Why, God, are you not answering this prayer? I'm in trouble. I'm crying out to you. I believe that you are good. I believe that you love me. I don't understand why you're allowing this difficulty in my life to continue. Why don't you deliver me? And this is a complex question that the Bible actually talks a lot about. And this initial idea, God being silent because there's sin in my life, is one answer to that question. It's certainly the answer that Job's friends came to when all this calamity came into Job's life. They said, well, Job, obviously there's sin in your life. And if you just confess it, we'll all be okay. And Job's like, there isn't. I promise. I've been serving God faithfully. I've been offering sacrifices all the time, not just for the sins I know about, for the sins I don't know about. And I even offer sacrifices for my kids in case they sinned and they didn't know about it. He was a very righteous person, and this terrible calamity happened in his life. And his friends kind of drew the same conclusion that David did here and said, well, it's because of sin. Because there's no other alternative. Well, the Bible gives us lots of alternatives to why God might be silent. If we're just take a moment to reflect on it. And we don't have enough time in the scope of this live stream to cover all of them, but I want to suggest a few of them that the Bible clearly tells us. I mean, this is one of the things that I think about the Bible, a biblical worldview. A biblical worldview is the lens through which we see the realities of the world around us. It's a way of describing them or making sense of them. I believe the Bible is the most accurate descriptor and explanation of the world and how it works. That becomes my worldview, right? And so this is one. The Bible is not doesn't hide truth from us if we seek it out. So here's an area where we get frustrated. God, I'm praying to you. Why are you not answering my prayer? Why are you silent? Well, option number one, it appears that, if I'm living a sinful life, that could be the reason that God's not answering my prayer. I mean, it's kind of the same as when we're parents and our kids are acting bratty in the store. We're probably not going to get them ice cream afterward. We're going to say, hey, you're not acting in accord with the character that I want to reward. If you did that, maybe we would get some ice cream afterwards. So there is that, right? And certainly that's reinforced in the New Testament when James says in James chapter 4, and he says, you ask and you do not receive. No. You don't have because you don't ask. They're not looking to the Lord they want their appetites fulfilled. They're coveting. They're angry that somebody else gets something they don't. He goes, what's the source of that? Because you're coveting, and you don't. If you just ask God, He gives you. He's the source of all things good. And then He says this. And then when you do ask, you still don't receive because you're asking with wrong motives. Motives that would spend it on your own passions. God, who's our loving Father, is certainly not going to feed this unhealthy character trait in you. So He's going to appear silent when you ask Him for the answer of this particular prayer request. He's not really hasn't heard you. He's acting as a loving Father. He's telling you, you know what, your motives are wrong. You're harboring something in your heart that needs to be corrected. I'm not going to feed that. I'm not going to reward you for those things. And so harboring iniquity, harboring wickedness, false motives, and so on, God will appear silent according to the Scriptures. Though He hears our prayers, He's just acting as our loving Father and not going to reward that kind of behavior. He wants us to experience the natural consequences of sinful behavior. So that's one option. Another option is that God is testing us. So this is actually found also in Psalm 66. He says, you've tested us and you've refined us like silver. This is earlier in the psalm, referring again to Israel being in bondage in Egypt for 300 years. And you've tested us and you've refined us like silver. So sometimes when we pray to the Lord, why is the trial there in the first place? So we have to come back to the source of the trial. Why are we facing this challenge, whatever that challenge is? Why won't it go away? What's the purpose of the challenge itself? Well, the Bible tells us that it is a part of our testing. What is the purpose of testing? It is to reveal what is in our hearts. Sometimes it reveals in our hearts underdeveloped character. The writer of Hebrews goes into great detail about this as you're going through this rough time because you need to learn endurance. You need to learn perseverance. Your character is underdeveloped, and so God is allowing you to experience this discomfort so that you learn how to persevere. You learn how to endure so that you can keep your eyes focused on Jesus. I mean, and God says Jesus went through the same thing. He endured the cross. He was willing to endure the very same qualities of trials that we do. And he was proved faithful in his trial. He endured. And God is disciplining us as sons, the writer of Hebrews says, so that we can grow and be strong. I mean, you don't build big muscles without resistance, right? And continually, over a long period of time, pushing against that resistance and your muscles grow. We all understand this concept. And so sometimes God is silent because the trial is serving a purpose, and that purpose is not yet been fulfilled. We need time and space to develop character, and so sometimes trials persist so that our heart is refined. And so maybe it's revealing there's underdeveloped character in us, and God is allowing that trial to continue. Another thing that God reveals in us through trials, not underdeveloped character, but highly developed character. So God allows us to endure trials because there is good character in our heart, and there's a purpose that our character needs to be displayed for other people. Peter writes about this in his first epistle. He says, he's writing to people who are being persecuted, who are scattered all around because of the persecution against their faith, and they've had their land confiscated, their families have denied them. I mean, a bunch of bad things have happened to them, and he says the pagan Gentiles are reviling you. I mean, they're speaking slanderous things against you that are unfounded. You have good character, so that is going to be an opportunity for the gospel, Peter says, depending on how you act. So he is saying that he says this, I can't remember, I think it's in 1 Peter 3. He says, let your good deeds be evident to all so that they will see your good deeds. And this is in the scope of their slander against you and their persecution against you. They will see your good deeds and give glory to God on the day of his appearing. So our revealing the good quality of our character during a time of testing is often a way God displays his own glory to people who have yet to place their faith in him. And so, God, I'm praying to you that this terrible thing goes away in my life. Why on earth are you silent? Why are you not answering my prayer? And God says, well, I am using your highly developed character and your faithfulness to me to display my glory to someone who has yet to believe. And we have to trust him in that. It's like, okay, God, I trust you. I'm going to live according to my character. I'm going to let my good deeds, my faithfulness be evident. Other people are going to see that, and they will say, wow, there must be something about this Jesus whom I serve. And the last thing, just for the sake of time, there's many more that the Bible reveals why God might be silent. The last thing is that God is accomplishing all things according to his will, to accomplish the redemption of all things when Jesus returns and sits on a throne and we get to dwell in his presence forever. All of the world history is moving slowly toward that event. God's will can't be thwarted. He is moving forward with that will. Sometimes, however, God's will, the course he sets for me personally, or us as a nation, or us as a community, or us as a household, isn't what I'd prefer. But it's necessary so that he is because it's a necessary component of his larger will. I'm going through something hard because God is at work in someone else's life to bring about his will that's necessary for his overall will to take place. And let me give you an example of this using David's example in Psalm 66, and he talks about Israel being enslaved for 300 years. The reason they're enslaved is not because Israel did anything wrong. I mean, if anything, they've done good things. They've been faithful to him, and he rescues them. Remember, that's how they got in Egypt in the first place. He rescues them from the famine by bringing them to Egypt, and Joseph had the wisdom of storing grain, and everybody survived the great famine because of that. And obviously, we can use Joseph's life as an example of maybe God being silent, and why on earth is he silent, and bringing about a great deliverance, right, through Joseph's trials. But in the case of Israel in Egypt, all of a sudden they're enslaved, and God reveals to Abraham before all this happens. He says, I'm going to give you all this land, but you yourself won't own it. Neither will your sons. In fact, there's going to be a time where your descendants will be enslaved for 300 years. And he gives an explanation for this in Genesis. He says to Abraham, because the people that are in this land, the Amorites and Amalekites and all the ites, Hittites and so on, their sin is not yet complete. And so he is waiting for the completion of their sin, or the fullness of their sin, before he can act in a way that would be displayed to everyone as a just act against their wickedness. And until then, he continues to offer them mercy, patience, kindness. They're dwelling in a land that is characterized by flowing with milk and honey. They're being rewarded for their wickedness, essentially, while God's people are being enslaved. But it's a part of God's overall picture. He is giving Israel that land. He knows all things, and he sees that at one point this people who are dwelling in this good land that I am watering, God says, I'm being patient with them until their iniquity, to borrow David's term, becomes full. So full that God, when he acts against them, it will be a complete act of justice and righteousness to remove them from the land in order to give it to Israel, his children. And we're talking about this happens over hundreds of years. So we think about God's will moving forward that is for our good, sometimes includes someone being born into slavery, living their entire lives, and dying as a slave. They never see the fulfilled promise of God in me personally getting to the promised land. But I'm living by faith. I'm trusting in God that his promises are real, that he loves me, and I'm going to live faithfully during that time. So God's will is moving forward, and sometimes the course of his will asks me to endure a hardship. And while I'm enduring that hardship, my faithfulness will be rewarded. God says that our present trials will be far overshadowed by the glories we will receive when we see him in heaven. He will make it all right. It's not that we will live this unjust life and that declares the injustice of God. I mean, when we get to heaven, the glories will far outshine any trials. Paul says our current trials will be light and momentary in relation to that day. Sorry, I'm getting a notification on my phone. And so anyway, God might be silent today. And there's a number of reasons why that can be. But it doesn't mean that God isn't hearing your prayer, that God isn't listening, that he is withholding goodness from you because he's just being an unjust, unfair God. No, there's explanations for it that include our good, include our development, include revealing character that in us that is underdeveloped, that we need to have revealed to us, and that sometimes only through pain and difficulty reveals that in us. And it's all part of God's loving parenting of us to fully develop our maturity and character so that our faithfulness to him can display his glory, can be an act of evangelism, can result in our reward when we get to heaven, and it will all be made right. So when God is silent, take these into consideration. And the Bible offers so many more scenarios like this. He does hear, he loves us, and he is listening. We need to be patient and relinquish our will to his will, so that in the end, his goodness can be accomplished in us and in the world. So, Lord bless you today. We will see you again tomorrow morning.